So we have it at Pinello, Wessa, Whitefield Elementary School of the Arts, Talbot STEAM Innovation School, Venatucci, French, Webster, Sunrise, King, and the preschool. They all receive Title I services through teachers and they get some other funds through that too. I will say that the funding depends on their free and reduced lunch counts, how many students they have on those, and that's what qualifies a school. And then the schools are served in rank order. So the school with the highest free and reduced population gets the most money out of all of those, and so it goes in order. We have to serve them in rank order. Then we are also required 1% of the money, and I don't know on the last page, we get $1,464,225. So out of that $1,400,000 some, 1% of that has to be put towards parental involvement activities at those schools. And so they use that for different things to involve the parents, bring them into the school, educate them, just get the parents involved in their child's learning. We also use some of that money for summer school, the AVID program, which 2 of our elementary schools have, Venatucci and Webster both have AVID. Some of the money goes for our homeless, a percentage, and it could help with a lot of different things. We use a lot of it for the transportation of homeless students, but it could help with if they need school supplies or anything that they might need for school to help them be more successful. And then we use some of the money for a coaching position to just help our teachers be better so our students get a better learning environment. Okay, Title II allocations so it gets a little bit less each time. Title I is our biggest funds. Title II is $292,322. And it's to improve the quality and effectiveness of teachers, principals, and other school leaders in order to improve academic achievement in all of our schools. So that's what that's kind of the guidelines that go with that money. Some of the things that we spend that money for are salaries. It pays for 3 part-time GT instructional coaches in the district, the salary of one and benefits of one of our district literacy coaches, materials, our teaching and learning cycle books, and other materials that new teachers get each year. It also trainers at effective teacher training that all the new teachers in the district go through this training at the beginning of the year, and so it pays for some of the trainers at that. Coaching for administrators and PD opportunities for our non-public schools in our district. So certain funds have to be shared with any non-public schools that we have in the district. And there's a whole formula to figure out depending on their student numbers and then the whole population of the district that figures into it and to determine how much of the money they get. So this year it's about $10,334 between our 2 private schools that we have in the district. Okay, and Title III is, we get probably the least money, it's $22,071, but it's to ensure our English learners, including immigrant children, attain English proficiency and develop high levels of academic achievement in English. And this money is determined by our number of English language learners that we have in the district. So that's what determines that amount. So like our neighboring district has a lot more English language learners, and so they receive a lot more Title III money. So with that money, we use it for professional development for our EL teachers and also our classroom teachers. We buy supplemental program materials for them, and it's also for parental involvement activities. Okay, and our last one is Title IV. And Title IV money, we get $106,687. And it's for well-rounded opportunities. And there's some guidelines around this. You have to spend 20% of that $106,000 on well-rounded activities, which could include things with the arts, music, STEM, STEAM, any of those things, just to develop well-rounded students. And it also, and then 20% also has to be used for safety and healthy students. Safe and healthy students. And so anyway, that's 20% of it. And then educational technology. So we use it for things like Discovery High School uses it for some of their field experiences to get their students out in the community, seeing some different things in the community. The Haven School also uses it. Right now it's called D3 My Way, but oh no, it just got renamed to the Haven. But the Haven School uses it for field experiences. It also, we use it for opportunities for students to see performing arts in the community. Whitefield Elementary School of the Arts does a lot of that. STEAM activities, all of our schools get money for stipends and supplies for different STEAM activities. And then materials for building trade certificates, which is kind of at the high school level, some of the kids that want to earn certificates that will help them in their careers as they get out of school. We also use it for opportunities for our non-public schools. So Title II money and Title IV money, we share that with our non-public schools in the district, the two that I was talking about. And that just is a total of $3,344. French uses some of this money for their Leader in Me training. Our Catapult program in the elementary school also gets a little bit of this money. Pinello uses it for capturing kids' hearts at two of our schools, Pinello and Sunrise. And then Grand Mountain uses it for computer science materials. And I just came from Grand Mountain. They had their showcase tonight, and it was amazing, and money well spent, I'm just going to say. It was really fantastic. And then King uses it for their project-based learning training. And so that's kind of what we use that for, and it's kind of different every year, what schools get it, and all of that. So that is all, that's what we use our federal money for, on our federal programs. And do you have any questions? Yes?
In that Title IV funding, you say well-rounded, could that funding be used for social emotional initiatives?
Yes, yes. Well, usually that falls under the safe and healthy students. So yeah, and we do use it for some of that. Yes. You know, the state, good question. She asked, how will Title I money be figured next year when everybody gets free lunches? You know, the state's still working on that. They don't have a definite answer. What they are telling us is we really want to still encourage our parents to fill out the forms because that's going to make a difference. I don't know what they're going to use otherwise. You know, to determine how much money we get in Title I, they use the census from our area. I don't know if they will use that. They haven't come up with that yet. Yeah?
Is there a lot of reporting?
He asked if there's a lot of reporting.
Is there a lot of hours spent there?
Yes, I'm going to say yes. No, you know, there's a lot at the front end. Like this time of year, it's really busy working with them on this, and you have to write a lot of narratives to go with everything that you're going to spend the money for. And they're very picky. They send it back. You might use the same wording one year, and the next year they'll send it back and won't accept it. So it kind of depends on who your readers are. But yeah, and then just throughout the year, making sure the money's accounted for and all the paperwork. They have to submit paperwork for everything that they do. because we get audited on it, and so, yeah, there's a lot. And then the finance office has to keep up with it all, so, yeah, it's great money.
What's the best way for the public or parents to get information on how specific schools are utilizing these funds within their district?
Well, good question. Probably if you would contact, the central office, we can share all that with you. Right now, it just goes in. We're just preparing for next year, and that money will go, or that application will go in, and it's due the end of June, and then we get it back for revisions and everything. It usually gets approved in the summer, and then, yes?
It would be fair on that too, with your building, your back committees in the buildings. The principals don't always, it's not really commonplace to talk about the funding sources of the programs and the supplies and where all that comes from, but they should be talking and putting out to their community on their website and at their back meetings about the programs and such that they are doing. So it's a very fair question to ask Mrs. Finch Webster or whatever principal at whatever school. I'd like to know where that's funded, and in general, they may not know all the specifics from general fund items, but they generally know if something's coming from title, because we have those conversations with the staff involved in those programs about where that funding is coming from in particular. So that's a very fair question for any principal. They would know what's being funded out of title funds.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Taylor.
District finance for the budget.
Thank you. I'm Terry Kipper, the Chief Financial Officer for the school district, and we have to present to the District Accountability Committee every year regarding the budget and any input that you guys want to offer that between now and the time that the board will approve the budget, which is in June. So that starts off. So let me kind of give you a heads up how we started. Back in November, the governor sends a proposal to the what's called the Joint Budget Committee of the state, which is who actually funds or creates the bills that fund school districts and the state in general. And so with that, we start our budget process. In December, we see where we are as far as enrollments and different things and try to factor that in. And in January, the legislature starts usually around the first week in January, going down through the process. We follow that along from there and come all the way to June. I think this year it's like June 18th, I think is the board meeting, and that's when our budget was actually adopted. So where are we at and how did we get here? So we started in April with the board to meet with them, and we sat down and worked through and got the goals for the year. And so what those were this year is making sure that we're cutting our deficit in half. Last year, we went in the hole a big time. We had some additional funds from the ESSER funds that we received from the pandemic, and we had some. We wanted to make sure that we were taking care of that. We also had fallen behind other areas as far as our staff salaries and wages go, and we wanted to make a big push for that last year. So we went in the hole last year. So one main goal is to cut that at least in half, because the board says that we want to have a balanced budget, and I say that too. We want to have a balanced budget by the following year. So in 24-25, that budget has to be balanced based on board directive. On top of that, it's always been our goal in our school district, and the board maintains that we want to always have between 2 and 3 months of funds in our reserves. And so we work through that. We also have added, because of the difficulties with COVID and kids leaving and coming back to school and all those things, we know we have a lot of social emotional problems. So we wanted to add some additional social emotional learning efforts to our budget. And then Mr. Duran looks around and says, you know what? Our math scores and in general the state's math scores are subpar. We're going to focus on math this year. So that was another priority that we put in there. And then, of course, we still want to continue on making sure that we're paying our staff what's fair and get them as much as we can as far as that goes. We have one other piece of information that's going on, as I mentioned the word yesterday, that was the funding that came from the federal government to help support us during the pandemic. We still have some additional funds, but those funds are going away. We did an awful lot of stuff for students. We had different programs that we had additional teachers and those kind of things. And so we have to make sure that as those funds go away, we either support or supplement that if the programs determine that that's something we really need to do, which was a lot of what we had. And so we ended up having to work through that particular piece. With that said, what you see on the green piece of paper meets all those goals for the year as of right now. Again, it's not completely done yet. We're still working on finalizing that. We have to do our presentation from the EIP group on the 11th, and the following week we have the board luncheon and the board meeting, which on that Thursday night I'll be doing a major board presentation. If any of you guys have insomnia, I suggest you tune in online, especially you guys. You know, in school you guys probably could use a good nap, right? So get online, check it out. But it's very detailed in breaking out the school district budget. You asked the question earlier. That's going to be a great way for you not to see necessarily the title funds, but the rest of the district funds and how that's going to lay out. And we kind of got a piece of it here. So that's kind of the overview of what's going on. We had a very good year. The Joint Budget Committee allocated additional funds to buy down what's called the negative factor or the budget stabilization factor. And that's the amount of money that when the economy went downhill in 2012, that the legislature went into and said, you know what, we think we can adjust this backwards and get away with it. And they did. And so that was the amount of money that they had withheld from districts over each year. Right now, the projected in the next year is $1.49 million that we won't receive. But during the peak, we were short $10 million per year for a few years. Our district, Whitefield School District 3, has been shorted based on what Amendment 23, which was the guarantee that the voters put in place to fund education, over $100 million since 2012. Think about that. That's a lot of money that this district has not had to be able to support our students with. But we're very, very happy with where we landed out now. And we have some additional funding this year. And basically you can see in that top part what the difference between state, local, and the federal share. How that works is we are allocated a certain amount of dollars per student. And this year that's going to be $10,034. It's the first time ever over $10,000. And with that, so we take full-time students times that number, that gives us our dollars that we receive coming in. And with that, then the state then says, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to calculate how much we owe you, and then we're going to collect your property taxes from our community, and then we're going to collect our specific ownership taxes, which are the taxes that we pay for our license plates. And then whatever difference is the state gives us in what's called state equalization. And you can see that right currently inside that number, the state has been providing 77.06% of our funding as opposed to the property taxes of 22.6%. So everybody thinks that, you know, the property tax is the majority of it. It is not in our school district. Some school districts it is. If you were, say, in Aspen, which is, I believe is Garfield County, they are 100% funded by property taxes. They receive no state funding support. The other thing is we have expenditures for this year. 86.09% of our business here in Whitefield is in salaries and benefits. Mr. Steck's been in HR since heck was a pup, and he can tell you right now that we are a people business, and our dollars in our budget prove that out every year. We have a total this year of around $114 million worth of expenditures. And then we also have to account for the fact that because of TABOR, we have to keep a certain amount of reserves, and that's 3%. And for us, that last year was $3.18 million, and that would give us a balance in our reserves of about $20 million. Again, I'll fill you in here in a minute about where that leaves us as far as what I mentioned earlier between the 2 and 3 months of fund balance in our reserves. I did a breakout a different way. We break out our expenses by state, mandates into different areas. And you can see in instruction and pupil support, that's our direct services to kids. We spend 65% of our money doing that. Back in about 2008, there was a amendment on the ballot to force districts to provide 65% of their stuff into those particular areas. And we've been there and above that all along. And there were like 6 districts in the entire state at that time that were actually doing that. Whitefield was one of them. And so you can be very proud, and I'm very proud, that as our district, we are putting our money where our mouth is towards our kids. With that, the major items that we have this year, let me back up a little bit. I want to talk about assessed valuation. Assessed valuation is how we collect our property taxes. And as you guys, and some of you guys are going to have to ask your parents what your property tax bill looked like this morning when you opened it up. And so most of the state has an increase in assessed valuation of nearly 40%. That's a lot. The state is trying to, they put a bill out there really late to try to help combat that, where they want to take they're going to ask the voters to take part of the TABOR refunds to be able to fund a backfill, to be able to help try to support some of this increase. And so for us, right now our tentative number is around $950 million. That really helps us out in the area of our Parks and Rec department and the Security Public Library, because what that does is they get to keep all their property taxes. I mentioned before that the state funding, they just reduce the amount of state money based on the tax. So if we collect another 20 million in property tax, the state just pays us 20 million less. So that's our pie never doesn't change in that scenario. And so that's out there. Keep an eye on that, guys, because that will affect us as we move forward. And the legislature has to be done by middle of next week. I think it's Wednesday that they have to have all this stuff done by. And then the vote, again, for that will take place in November to see if that really can come true or not, or if these numbers are going to stick. Major increases and major items in our budget this year, salaries and benefits account for around $6 million of the increase. Our health insurance, we've changed how we do health insurance. It's been a real hardship for those who have to have family insurance to pay so much. We're providing additional support for the family premium and the double premium for people with kids or just their spouse on there that we've done in the past. That's about $650,000. Staffing changes this year, about $1 million. Our ESSER, I mentioned earlier, our ESSER funds going back into the general fund is around $1.2 million. Activity support, everybody knows that when you go to the grocery store and you try to buy things, how much more expensive it is. On top of that, you compound that when you go to try to buy a football helmet that 2 years ago cost $250, it's costing almost $500 a helmet now. And so there's a significant amount of increase in some of those things that has to be accounted for. You guys, most of you know, because I think security's probably presented before, but we have an armed security officer in every building now. And we budgeted a significant portion of that in this current year, and this additional $310,000 is the amount that's taken to finish hiring and getting all those people in place in our district. Inflation increases for our utilities and things around $120,000. I talked again at the beginning about the math and literacy coaches, another $309,000, and the social emotional another $250,000. So our target this year was to get to below $2.1 million in fund balance currently. The budget that I hope to present to the board next week will be about 2.03. So it'll be less than the 2.1 million in use of fund balance this year. And again, that will give us a target of the 2 and 3 months of fund balance, which will put us at about 2.29 months. So after having the budget work session with the board in April, we came down with the plan, and this, what you see in front of you, meets all that criteria. And so with that, I want to give you guys an opportunity to ask any questions, and I've rattled on long enough. Which ones? Property taxes. Okay, so property taxes. They go out and say, pay the assessor at the county, and they go out and drive around the neighborhoods most of the time, and see the house and say, okay, there's this house, that if that house sold compared to the other houses that sold, its value would be, I'm just gonna use $300,000, okay? That house is worth $300,000. What then happens is they have what's called the assessment rate, which in this year is 6.715. So they take that amount, 300,000 times 6.715, to give you how much of your house is taxable. Okay? And that gives you how much is taxable. Then what happens is everybody around the school district, we get to assess 27 mills for the school district, and we have the levy overrides and other things. There's other pieces like the fire protection, the road and bridge for the county, and those kinds of things. And they all have to come up with a certain amount of mills. Well, a mill is 1,000, okay? So they would take those number of mills, in our case, 27 mills times that number, it would say how much we would fund it. It's roughly around $300. And then that's how much you would have to pay into the county, that the county turns around and pays me for those property taxes. It's kind of a really confusing thing. If you want to come by, or you want me to come by, I'll come over to, are you a Mason too? You're a Watson? What's that? Okay, well you holler at me and I'll come over. And I'll walk you down through it. I got a nice little PowerPoint for that. I would love to do that. Absolutely love to do that. KIMBER. That's a great question. That's a great question. Yes, ma'am?
Mr. Denver, I've got about at least half dozen community organizations that are willing to support the district in the social emotional realm. I was going to send some emails between tonight and tomorrow, kind of with those different organizations and with like Dr. Wiggins, with the social worker in my kids' school. Is that a communication that you'd like to be on the radar, or would you like to? Right now, I kind of just got them to agree, which is coming to the school just as a community service thing. But I don't know how soon in advance you'd like to be looped in those kind of conversations.
Honestly, programmatically, you need to be speaking with Mr. Wiggins and with Mrs. Lake in our special education office. She'll be in charge of that and part of it going on in the next year. Mr. Sateka would be a great way to keep in the loop as well, and we will make sure that the right people get in the right buckets, and then they'll loop me in when and if it's determined that I need to be involved on the financial side of it. So, yep, that's how that would work. Thank you for that, by the way.
You said one more name besides Ms. Link.
Mr. Sateka.
How do you spell your last name?
I can tell that info.
Okay, awesome. I was like, I don't see you on this agenda somewhere.
Actually,
Okay, yeah.
I'm down, my last name is.
Oh, I found you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
He starts with a V, not an S.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyone else have anything they would love to know about
And you know,
this fun
you
stuff?
know, it's a big topic that, Skipper, the property tax question, you know, the answer anything, whatever you tell you.
And again, I would love to come to you guys to school. I came to this school and taught kindergartners for a day. And they still are alive. So the question is Whitefield School District poor? And the answer to that is we are the 6th lowest funded school district in the 41st lowest funded state. So the answer is yes. But I'll stand up here all day long and say how proud I am of what we do with what we get. We do an amazing job with dealing with things with what we have, and I couldn't be prouder of our team. There's 178 school districts in the state, and we're the 6th lowest funded. Well, and part of it for us is the fact that the property taxes are low around here, and why we're at 77% state, because we don't have a lot of businesses are taxed at 29% instead of the 6.715 I was talking about earlier. And so Amazon really helped us, guys. That's something that probably come up when they built Amazon in that area up there by the airport. Those property taxes really helped us out, but again, it just mostly helped the state out. Yes, ma'am. Property taxes are not the reason for inflation, they are a byproduct. The reason they're going up so much is a byproduct of inflation. So property taxes don't cause it, but they're going up because of inflation. Great question. Yes, ma'am?
One more question for you. Of this list, where is the funding for the in-flight counselors coming from?
We do not pay for in-flight counselors. The military pays for those and assigns them to our buildings.
Okay, I'm just wondering where the disproportion is coming from with like DAAC has dozens and we have like 3.
That's because they are on base and we are not.
I'm going to ask him to explain the difference between, like, a little bit between, I don't want to compare too much, but between us and Fountain Fort Carson District 8, and a lot of that has to do with the military population and the Department of Defense money.
Right, so we receive what's called impact aid dollars in our school district for military impacted families. And for us, that adds up to about $2.3, $2.5 million every year. Fountain Fort Carson School District ends up getting around $30 million per year. You get a lot more dollars for the people who live on the post. Now, that sounds all terrible, but here's the deal. Fountain can't go out and get a bond issue because most of their district is sitting on the military base, which is tax exempt, right? So that is how the federal government pays back Fountain for not being able to bond, and that's why they put the money away, and that's why they were able to take those funds. They don't have to go and ask the voters, they just get it. That would be great if we didn't have to go ask the voters, we could get it, but at the same and from someplace else, so it didn't come from the voters, but that is a fair way for them to have to be able to deal with it down there.
And just one part to add to that is, you don't want to continually ask your voters for money, right? I mean, people generally don't want to pay more taxes, that sort of thing. But at the same time, our community has been very wonderful about supporting the district when we do ask. We have a long history of asking for only what we need when we need it. And so the last time between the bond and mill request was 12 years. That's quite a long time, with a certain segment of the population that comes and goes with military or what have you. Again, that's very long. If you compare that to other school districts in the area, sometimes you'll see them coming up for a bond and mill request like every other year or something like that, and you also hear about them getting denied a lot. We've been very fortunate in our community to have that support, even with the military population that, again, maybe is more transient or what have you. I don't predict that, because we're having conversations with our school board and others, that it will be 12 years in between the next request. Our last request was in 2017. Again, we were very fortunate to have our community support that. We still have some real needs. We have some needs for our students. We have some needs for our staff. We have some needs for our facilities. As Mr. Kimber talked before, I think we do an excellent job with the money that we do have, considering our funding level. But there are times where things build up and we need some additional funds for that. And so that is something that we're discussing at the central administrative level, but also with our school board about when to do that with our community. And of course, we need support from our community organizations. We need support from our community members. We need support from you when we do that. And so we always are trying to look to make sure that the community knows what we're doing. That's part of what DAAC is all about, but also know that how it benefits them. And so as I mentioned before, this gym isn't just for Webster, it's for community needs as well. And we do that all across the board with all of our facilities and such. We're very unique in the sense that we're the only school district in the state that has that relationship with the Park and Rec system. And Park and Rec is just one way, and Lane will talk about that in a little while, one way that we get community into all of our schools and being able to use our sites and our campuses and our facilities as such. And so again, we're always interested in partnering with our community, not just so that they'll vote for a bond and mill, but so that that bond and mill money benefits our community and it benefits our families and really makes us better.
And one thing you just did mention real quick is the fact that we do have growth, that we are going to have to potentially build a new school. If you go out east, you see all the dirt that's moved. Now, the economy has slowed that way down, and so we'll have to see when that picks back up again. But that is definitely a real possibility in the not so distant future.
I knew there were more questions. I knew there were more good topics to talk about the budget.
I mean, honestly, this piece of paper that he has, he's got his notes and such on it. Again, it's one piece of paper, but there are a ton of things that go behind every one of those figures. There's a lot of details to that, and so we're an open book in terms of if you have questions, if they're not tonight, if you want to contact us another time to talk through that, to get more information, there's literally on our website a financial transparency button. Right when you get on there, it's very prominently displayed. That gets into the details about our finances. We've got nothing to hide. We want to put it out there. We want our community's support, and we're always welcome to ideas and suggestions. More than once, we've had new board members and other people who have come into the district and are just amazed at how much we get out of the funds that we do have. And they're really kind of surprised about that. But if there's other ideas that community members have in how we allocate our funds and what we do with them, we're all ears always.
Thank you, and that's the